Back in the day, we only had those little nasty crab apples, and you only got them once a year, not these hybridized fructose bombs, okay? And this, I think, is the part of the missing puzzle of the diet world, is that.
Welcome to the Brain Fit Podcast, where we share the cutting-edge science on how you can improve your memory and live a happier, healthier life.
My name is Robert Love. I'm a neuroscientist, and I have a medical clinic in Florida where we are reversing Alzheimer's in our patients. Today on the Brain Fit Podcast, we have Mike Collins, the sugar-free man. This is a great interview about the impact of sugar on our brain and our overall body health, and the impact of sugar regarding the risk of Alzheimer's disease. Mike is an expert in the impact of sugar on the brain and overall body health, and he's got some great tips on how to reduce sugar in your life without losing some of your favorite food. So here is Mike Collins.
Welcome back. We have another amazing interview for you today. We are here with Mike Collins, the original sugar-free man and founder of sugaraddiction.com. Mike, thank you so much for your work in the world. You're really helping people live happier, healthy lives and really greatly reducing the risk of Alzheimer's disease with your work.
Thanks for having me, Robert. I appreciate it. It's an honor. I really do. I'm happy to do it. As we mentioned before, my mom died of Alzheimer's. This is a mission of love here for you and me. So.
And this is such a really important thing for people to understand. A lot of Alzheimer's disease is now being called type 3 diabetes. Having type 2 diabetes greatly increases the risk of Alzheimer's disease in a variety of ways. And Dr. Dale Bredesen in his work has shared that almost everyone he looks at that he's helped, it's in part improving their insulin sensitivity, and that comes from cutting down sugar. And so, Mike, I want to get your thoughts on this. Why is reducing sugar? Why is eliminating sugar? Why is this so important for the brain, and why is this so important for reducing the risk of Alzheimer's disease?
Well, you nailed it on the head. I've interviewed Dr. Bredesen as well, and it definitely is metabolic syndrome of the brain. Bottom line, like you said, diabetes 3. Alzheimer's, now diabetes 3. And I believe that, as Dr. Perlmutter says, it shrinks your brain. Sugar shrinks your brain. Okay. And it's like Dr. Amen's talking about the exact same stuff, the scans that he does. So look, this is the one thing that I don't think people understand that has happened over the years is the evolution of the information about fructose. Okay. I want to throw this out right at the beginning. And, I've asked many of the people that I've interviewed, is fructose a psychoactive drug? And they've all said yes.
Really? It's quite the question.
Yeah. And the bottom line here is that, we got fructose once or twice a year as we evolved as animals and humans. And now we have a drip, literally. Anybody with any habit at all, the average is 30 teaspoons a day. Now, anybody
30 teaspoons a day?
Yeah, anybody with, it's exactly right. 30 teaspoons.
So much.
It's insane. And now, look, if you're overweight or you're, got a real sugar habit, it's 40 and 50 teaspoons a day, okay? It's a drip, and again, the science is not that old around fructose. It's not like that developed. And the new science talks about the behavioral changes that happen when you ingest the stuff. Okay. In animals, they call it the foraging instinct. They do risky things to get to the fruit or whatever when it's ripe. Now, remember, back in the day, we only had those little nasty crab apples, or we only had little nasty berries on the bushes. And
crab apples are terrible. I hate this.
Right. And you only got them once a year, not these hybridized fructose bombs. Okay. And this, I think, is the part of the missing puzzle of the diet world, is that fructose hits all of the brain reward chemicals: dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, oxytocin. It goes on and on.
Really? Oxytocin?
Yeah. And when you're like consistently pounding, they like to be tickled a little bit with fructose. They don't like to be pounded day in and day out. Right. And it literally, I'm not telling you anything, that your dopamine receptors are down regulated. You have less of them. Okay. They're thinned out. And so when you stop using sugar, which should be your biggest clue, you are a little bit blue, a little bit depressed, right? Because you have downregulated your dopamine receptors. So when you look at this whole picture, like we have over a decade of doing this, and you see folks literally on Zoom on your support meetings come back to life, their face gets thinner, but moreover, more importantly, when we do surveys, the most important thing that they talk about weight loss is like most people come to me for weight loss, but it's always like number 3 or 4. Number 1 is always that their brain came back online.
Really?
Yes, they started focusing better, remembering better. They weren't as anxious. They weren't as depressed. They weren't as angry. You know, so many people have said they stopped snapping at their kids or their spouse. So really, I mean,
you know, that anger thing is so real. I was with a family member, and she had some sugar that day, and then I was doing something, and she just lost it, and she's using F-bombs. I thought, oh my gosh, what did you eat? Like this is not you. And then 2 weeks later, I'm not in a good mood. I have a bunch of dates, right, which have a lot of fiber, but still a lot of sugar. And then someone says something to me, and I just feel this anger in my body, and I yell, and I think, what on earth just happened? I haven't yelled in months. Like, why did I have this sensation of anger boiling in my body? I was like, oh my gosh, just ate a pile of sugar, and that just.
I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to tell you why, because you had your entire day's dopamine inside of 15 minutes with those dates. Dates are one of the highest fructose, dried dates. You know what I mean? One of the highest fructose things. It's like candy.
It really does. I know it spikes blood sugar, insulin really high, but I love them. They're so good.
2 of my contemporaries have written book. One has written a book. The other woman is, quite famous actually. That woman is still trying to rebuild the relationship with her adult daughters, because they talk very articulately about this raging phenomena that goes away when you get off the sugar and the ultra processed carbs. So it's a very real phenomena that I think people are missing and not understanding the effects that sugar has on mood. And look, this should be a big clue when you're headed towards Alzheimer's or you're thinking about Alzheimer's. Everything that we've mentioned, the metabolic syndrome of the brain, the dopamine, the addiction, the addictive nature of it. So anyway, I just I don't even know where to start. It really is.
Let's talk about fructose a little bit. Is fructose an okay way to say it, or is it fructose? I want to make
fructose or fructose. They say it both ways. Neither one is wrong.
If you are having trouble sleeping, I have a great supplement I want you to know about. It's called Roar Lion's Mane. So Lion's Mane has many different benefits for the brain and for the body. Lion's Mane improves memory. Lion's Mane reduces stress, reduces anxiety. It helps slow down aging by lowering inflammation, and it helps with sleep. It helps you fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and fall back to sleep. I learned about Lion's Mane about 5 years ago when I was having trouble sleeping. When I took it, after about a week, I noticed that I was sleeping better and I was able to fall back to sleep, and I was having vivid dreams, which is really cool. And now I take Lion's Mane 5 to 6 nights a week. And I do this because it helps me fall back to sleep. So when I wake up, I'm no longer anxious when I wake up, and I'm able to kind of lay still in bed and fall back to sleep. And I get vivid dreams, which I really like, and it improves my REM sleep. So if you'd like to try some of my Roar Lion's Mane risk-free, go to roarlionsmane.com or robertlove.net to learn more.
I think from high school chemistry, glucose, fructose, galactose, the 3 simple sugars, galactose being the sugar in milk. So with fructose, my thought is one of the best policies the United States government could make would be criminalizing high fructose corn syrup, because it's unnatural, it's extremely dangerous, it creates all kinds of disease. It's not even necessary. It doesn't save the food industry that much money, but it's doubled our risk of obesity. I don't think it's legal in Europe. Obesity rates are half in France. They're still higher than they were. But that's my thought. The high fructose corn syrup should just be eliminated, because humans we're not accustomed to eating it.
I agree 100%. I mean, I don't think there's any argument. If you look at the since the 1980s, when high fructose corn syrup hit the food system, if you look at the obesity numbers, they track there's almost a parallel line up, and how to do this, up and to the right. and they run right parallel. Okay. And it's because of the high fructose corn syrup in the candies and the sodas and even in the food system that is causing it. The body doesn't really there is no human bodily function that requires fructose. None, zero. Okay. And it causes fatty liver. We have an epidemic of 5-year-olds with fatty liver disease.
Yeah, can you tell people why fatty liver is so dangerous? It doesn't sound that dangerous, but it's really horrible, especially in children. Can you talk a little bit about that, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, fatty liver is an alcoholic's disease, okay? And these children definitely are not eating, and drinking any alcohol. And so the fatty liver, the fructose is only processed in the liver, okay? And there's another part of the fatty liver equation, if you will, or the fructose equation before I get to that, is that it literally loosens the tight junctions in your intestines, okay?
Really, I know gluten does that. I didn't know that sugar does that.
Fructose does. Now,
Fructose does.
for your audience, the table sugar molecule is half glucose and half fructose, okay? So it loosens, and also the villi, which are the things that actually absorb the food, get longer with exposure to fructose, okay? And so there's a lot to it. And leaky gut is the colloquial term for the loosening of the tight junctions of the endothelioma. I never pronounced that word right. But back to the fatty liver. Fatty liver is where, when fructose is processed only in the liver, now a little bit of fructose can be processed in the intestines, but for the most part, there's some diseases on the book, fructose intolerance and fructose malabsorption, which is very difficult to diagnose. You usually go to 3 or 4 doctors before you get to it. It looks like IBS because I believe personally, in an anthropological evolutionary biology way, is that, it gets into the intestine and then it pushes out just like it was supposed to back when we got fructose to spread the seeds around, right? Sort of a symbiotic relationship with nature, what have you. But so there's so many clues pointing to this, but no one is encapsulating, bringing them all together in one place. And the fatty liver is, when you ingest the fructose, it's almost like scarring. It adds. Now, there is a little bit of the reason fructose is popular in nature and honey and those little crab apples is that there is a little bit of storage for the fat in the liver, okay? But it gets overwhelmed and overboard as you continue to use the fructose, okay? And your liver gets, like I said, it's almost like a scarring. There's so much of it. It reduces the function of the liver to filter other stuff out, okay? So this is a super important part of the process that most of the diet industry is missing, okay? And we haven't really even talked about the emotional aspect of what I believe fructose does. So that's, a lot of people do focus on the physical part, okay? And we already know what the glucose is doing, okay? We know what that's, what's going on there. It's causing fat, obesity and heart disease and stuff. And I think the important part of the fructose puzzle, along with what you and I have discussed, the physical part, is the emotional, mental part of it being a psychoactive. I believe personally, after a decade of doing this with folks, that it's a psychoactive drug that makes you feel a little bit better about yourself. And that's what I think the reason people cannot stop using it.
Yeah, let's get into that a little bit. But first, I just want to wrap up fatty liver disease. So from what you shared, fatty liver disease. It impairs the function of the liver. My understanding is that fatty liver disease happens because people are consuming so much glucose and so much fructose that their body's got to drive the blood sugar level down, and it's got to store that sugar rapidly because it can't store it in the muscle, and it's got to go somewhere, and it usually becomes visceral fat, and when it runs out of that, it becomes liver fat, and fat clumped around the liver, and this impairs liver function. And the liver is one of our most important organs. It's so very important for regulating metabolism, regulating sugar, glycogen, but also detoxing the body. And so a non-functioning liver really puts someone at tremendous risk of all kinds of disease and greatly impairs their quality of life. And then when you do this to children, you're basically setting them up for a life of disease. I hope and pray not, but that's, if something doesn't change, a child with fatty liver disease is basically set up to be sick most of their life.
Yes. And, I have a coach who's lost 55 or 60 pounds, who put fatty liver in remission. This is something that can be reversed, okay, when you take the fructose out of the diet and generally the sugar out of the diet.
I would like to thank our sponsor, Dr. Love's MagnaSleep. This is my new magnesium supplement I designed with Dr. Kareem Zamori. This is the best magnesium supplement out there in the market. Let me explain why. First of all, it's got the right forms of magnesium. It's got magnesium threonate, which is really good for brain health. It's a smaller form of magnesium that can cross into the brain. Magnesium glycinate, very absorbable, great for overall body health. But it's also got magnesium malate, which is good for the muscles, and magnesium taurate, which is good for your heart. So it's got multiple forms of magnesium that are great for your overall body. And it comes with vitamin D and boron. Vitamin D and boron work with magnesium to really improve bone health. So that makes magnesium more valuable to your bones, all those three together. And it's got shilajit, which increases absorption. So I designed this to be the very best magnesium available to you today, and it is on sale right now. This is great for improving sleep, but also improving mood, reducing stress and anxiety, improving bone health, improving muscle health, improving energy function. So many benefits of magnesium, and you can try it absolutely risk-free. It comes with an unconditional 6-month money-back guarantee. If you don't absolutely love it, I'm happy to refund your money, but I want you to try this because so many people get a great benefit of magnesium, and this is the best magnesium available. So if you want to get this on sale, click the link below or go to robertlove.net to try it risk-free. So if there's one food that people could avoid, or 3 foods people could avoid to help reduce the risk of fatty liver disease, especially in children, but also in adults, what would those foods be?
Well, obviously it's the sugar itself, the table sugar. Now, look, I mean, I wrestle with this idea and I get a lot of pushback and a lot of blowback on it. And that is, the table sugar fructose molecule is the same as the fruit molecule in fructose. The molecule doesn't change. And I get a lot of pushback when people are trying to quit sugar, that they need to reduce their fruit intake down to low glycemic, low fructose stuff like Granny Smith apples and blueberries and like that, and just a little.
Love blueberries.
Yeah, it will keep the cravings alive. Okay. It will keep the cravings for the table sugar alive in the early days. First, get yourself healed up, try and go as fructose zero as you can, and then move on, right? But to answer your question, it's obviously high fructose corn syrup. I mean, that's like crack. Okay.
So is soda, I think my understanding is soda's the worst because it's got no fiber in it. And so
Yes.
it hits your blood really like a drug. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, sugar and no fiber doesn't exist in nature. And so our body just doesn't know what to do with that.
Right. No, yeah, absolutely. And same with fruit juices, okay?
Yeah.
It's almost like a soda with high fructose corn syrup in it because it's all sweetener, quote unquote, fructose, fructose, whatever way you want to pronounce it. But yeah, I mean,
The fruit juice is sneaky.
I think that obviously the table sugar, the high fructose corn syrup, and again, I want to put fruit in there because I want people to be aware that who the heck wants to quit sugar if you're always craving? And this will help keep the cravings alive if you're going to substitute like banana, a lot of high glycemic.
Yeah, what are some of those fruits to avoid? So bananas, those are really high glycemic index. Dates, which are some of my favorite, those are high glycemic.
You can't use dried fruit, and fruit juices are completely out if you're going to try and like cut back on sugar because it'll just keep the cravings alive. But as far as whole fruit, we have to look at the seedless variety. Okay, let's look at seedless grapes. Let's look at seedless oranges. Okay, these things cannot procreate in nature. They cannot reproduce. Okay, they have to be grafted. This is a man-made fructose bomb. Okay, this is a sweetness bomb. And people eat so many seedless grapes, they eat them frozen, whatever. It's candy in essence. And that's this again, I get a lot of pushback on, I get a lot of grief for. But when you've done tens of thousands of detoxes and you see people struggle who continue with their quote unquote healthy fruit, then, trying to get off the sugar, then it's almost pattern recognition at this point.
So it's these really high glycemic fruits like the seedless grapes, I've heard apples have been engineered so much that apples might even be too high in sugar. There's a great book by Bill Bryson. He wrote two great science books. One of them's called The Body. One of them's called A Brief History of Everything. In that book, in one of those books, he describes how apples at the time of William Shakespeare, these are ungenetically modified or not crossbred for sweetness.
Yes.
They were likely as sweet as a carrot today.
Yes.
I thought that's so interesting, right? That apples used to be as sweet as carrots, and carrots are very sweet if you're actually pretty attuned to sweetness. I thought that was so interesting that that's how much man or humans have pushed fruit to be super sweet.
Yeah, no, you're nailing it right on the head. If you off of all fructose, all kind of sweeteners for about 10 or 15 days, carrots taste very sweet, peppers taste sweet. But you're right that apples have been engineered, and that's the key word there, over 300 years to be these really sweet packages. And again, the science of fructose is not that old, and it's really coming to the fore. Like back in the day, it used to be the green grocer, okay? And some brilliant marketing technique and group combined it and made it fruits and veg, okay? And so people believe that somehow these two are combined, as opposed to these are as healthy as rough green vegetables. And it's just not true. It's just not true.
So let's talk about the emotionality of sugar. So I want people to understand, it's very clear, reducing sugar, eliminating sugar, especially eliminating high fructose corn syrup is really, really important for your brain health, for reducing the risk of diabetes, for reducing fatty liver disease. This is really important if you want to prevent Alzheimer's, or if you have early stage memory loss. You really want to get your insulin sensitivity, your insulin working, because if your response isn't working, your brain's not going to use energy effectively, and there's a cascade of problems that happen if you have type 2 diabetes and you're beginning to lose your memory. So with that established, what do people need to know about sugar and emotion that's helpful for them to quit their sugar addiction?
Okay. I'm looking at myself, and I have this shiner for you folks to think that my eye is losing it, but I whacked myself in the head with a weight, like a long story, but anyway.
Now, how much weight were you lifting? Was this a dumbbell?
And I looked at that like this, right? And I looked.
Oh my gosh, a 20-pound weight flying at your face?
I'm lucky that I didn't hurt myself more, but
my goodness, that's a big weight.
Yeah. So I it's like, anyway, I was like, it looks like I got it. Anyway, I guess it's self-consciousness, whatever. But answering your question is maybe the most important question of this century. And I say that with all humility, and just that, look, sugar addiction, sugar abuse, fructose abuse, I call it more even, but sugar addiction is a substance use disorder, okay? It's a substance use disorder. It's a drug addiction, okay? After being sober for 38 years, after working with alcoholics and drug addicts for the first 20 of them, and now for a decade working with sugar addicts, there is no difference. It's a very common construct in the world of alcohol and drugs that if you started using alcohol and drugs at 14 or 15, you stop growing emotionally. It's very well known in treatment centers. It's just a very common construct. Your life's a mess, your relationships, your finances. And the reason being is that you never solved or worked through most of life's problems. You used drugs at 4 or 5 in the afternoon or all day or whatever, and the problem was still there in the morning. And what we have found over, like I said, tens of thousands of detoxes and working one-on-one with 12 coaches and myself one-on-one with people is that, the research, 95% of people who lose any amount of weight gain it all back in the first year. And then some, they add some. And here's the issue. Here's the problem. The problem is that every diet known to man, every book ever written says quit the white stuff if you want to lose weight, okay? And the diet industry, the $78 billion worldwide diet industry, is missing this piece of the puzzle, okay? Most people come to me for weight loss, but once they get to the other side, they have these things to say. They had to go through, in order to stay off of sugar, in order to make it a lifestyle or reduce it way down, They had to understand that they were self-medicated. Now, think of the drug and alcohol analogy at 14 or 15, and now extrapolate it backwards to a child at 2 or 3, probably in the womb, but definitely as a baby. Your parents did this to you, okay? They gave you a cookie, they sent you towards the TV. We learn unconsciously to use sugar to assuage or tamp down pain, worry, fear, anxiety. And no one is putting this back together because sugar is so freely available, so ubiquitous, even a child can score it with almost no money.
If you or someone you love has Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, I want you to know there is hope. Alzheimer's is preventable and it is even reversible. In fact, we are reversing Alzheimer's in my medical clinic here in Florida. My partner and medical director is Dr. Josh Hellman, a medical doctor trained at Harvard who specializes in preventing and reversing Alzheimer's disease, and we are reversing Alzheimer's in our patients. If you'd like to learn more about working with us to both prevent Alzheimer's and even reverse Alzheimer's and reverse memory loss associated with other forms of dementia, we would love to hear from you and send you some free information so you can learn what we are doing and see if it's a fit for you to come down and work with us in our clinic. We also work with other clinics around the country to help patients both prevent Alzheimer's as well as to reverse Alzheimer's and reverse memory loss associated with dementia. So if you'd like to learn more, go to brainpowerclinics.com. Go to brainpowerclinics.com and then enter your information. We will send you some free information, and then we hope to work with you, if we can be helpful to you, to help you prevent and reverse Alzheimer's disease.
Is this like emotional eating, that people reach for sugar when their emotions are down or when they're upset? Is this in the same category?
It's absolutely like emotional eating, but I got this saying, show me an emotional eater who's using sugar and I'll show you an emotional sugar addict. You know what I mean? You have to look at the addiction part first. You have to look at the piece of the puzzle that is physical and biochemical. Okay. And yes, but what happened, your answer to your question is yes, but it's only after your abstinence can you begin work on this. Okay. Most people are in talk therapy for 10 years, a lot of my clients, but they unwind it all on the way home at the 7-Eleven. Okay. They get an emotional work in and then they go and they eat the whatever. And because society, you can give this to a baby with no legal, moral, or ethical.
I'm so upset. I was in a doctor's office. I saw kids eating just a ton of candy and kids drinking sugar sodas. I'm like, why is this okay? And then a dentist told me that his patients will give their kids like Coca-Cola, not to pick on Coke specifically, but they'll give them soda in a bottle. I thought, why is this legal? Why is it legal to give children this drug and like such a hardcore drug like soda straight into their bloodstream? I'm just like, why is this possibly legal?
Well, I mean, I share your outrage. And look, I mean, I think that in 50 years from now, they're going to say, they used to give sugar to kids, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be like this. Like, oh my gosh, what were we thinking?
Because the science will have caught up. It's like seatbelts in cars, drinking and driving. When the science finally says this is this, you have to change the cultural battleship. You have to turn it around, go at all complete 180. And so here we are in a position now that, when you talk to any of my clients who lost 100 pounds or 200 pounds, everybody that comes to me, Robert, they want a food plan and an exercise plan. They think somehow that eating less and exercising more, which is the brainwashing of the diet industry, is the solution to this problem. But the solution to the problem is really this emotional work that is required post abstinence. Okay. It doesn't do any good to do it first. You have to do it afterwards. And then you begin to work through. Now, it doesn't have to be capital T trauma, sexual, physical abuse. It can be just something in life that you didn't get closure on, you get to start rethinking and reworking after you take your drugs away, your sugar away, and your everyday stressors. Okay. You've learned to manage your everyday stress with sugar.
So let me make sure I got this. So the first step is abstinence from sugar. Yeah, that kind of opens you up to really feel your emotions. I noticed when I started, I have ADHD. I was prescribed Adderall, still am. I noticed when I took less Adderall, I felt my emotions a lot more. right? I think taking Adderall stunted my emotions for a variety of reasons, or my emotional development, because I didn't feel them. And so my relationships are so much better. I'm just a much nicer person not taking Adderall every day. So what you're saying is that by stopping sugar, we can that frees up our emotions, and then we can do the emotional healing that we need, and then that's when things really change in our life. Is that right?
100% correct. And I have ADHD too, and would never take Adderall because obviously I'm a recovering addict. But the bottom line is the same thing happens. It's wired together, fired together. Same thing is happening. It doesn't matter if it's Adderall or sugar, okay? You can move it. But yes, the answer to your question is 100% yes. And here's the interesting part and the most difficult part of this equation. People, this is an unconscious process, okay? Without a guide, without a lead, without a group, without people who walk this walk before you. These are the two things I study the most in this work. Cravings and denial, okay? Cravings and denial, all right? And, you know, you're going to start craving. The body is just going to figure out one way to get this back into your system, okay? If you are like, whatever, you're 40 pounds down, you're 5 months in, and something happens in your life, whatever, financial, relationship, work, career, whatever. And you will say, oh, well, I've lost 40 pounds. Let me just have a little. Okay. And that always leads nowhere good. Okay. That if I can have just a little. And so anyway, what I'm getting at is like, we have to bring it to the conscious level because it is largely unconscious. And one of the largest symptoms of addiction is denial. And if you're denying that this is actually happening, what I'm describing, then fine, carry on with the diets, right? But if you kind of want to open, I call it just let the information light on you. If you're a little bit open to this possibility, then, you know, first, A, let's get you abstinent, let's get you detox. And then B, let's work with what comes up because we're going to have to like literally pattern or interrupt. We're going to have to interrupt what's going on when you start to get upset, okay? And when you start craving sugar. And that
but people get upset a lot less when they're off of sugar. So but they feel their emotions more because they're not drugged up on sugar. This is fascinating.
Caffeine is, Mike, I'm losing my mind. Okay. So about 30 days in, sometimes sooner, people are like, there's so many things coming at them in regards to their life stressors and their old stuff and their kids and their relationship and their job, that they don't have a way to blunt it. They don't have a way to tamp it down, to slow it down, to block it, because we're pulling out their crutch. We're kicking their crutch out. We're working together to remove the crutch. But anyway, what I'm getting at is they have to, we call it the difference between effort-based dopamine and substance-based dopamine.
I love that. I just took a cold plunge right before this, so that was effort-based dopamine, right? I like my dopamine's way high from 3 minutes in the cold plunge, right? I earned that dopamine versus taking Adderall, right? I didn't earn the dopamine.
Adderall is the substance-based dopamine. And when I say dopamine, I mean all of the brain reward chemicals are affected, okay? So I use it because everybody knows what dopamine is, right? And so this change, this ability to use like a walk, a hug, yoga, a cold plunge, massage, whatever it is. Exercise, lift weights, go for a walk, anything that will. And a lot of people believe that exercise is the equation of exercise, of eat less and exercise more, is helping, quote unquote, burn calories. That's already been debunked. Okay. That's not true. What's happening is the people who actually do exercise are helping their brain reward chemicals so that they can get through their withdrawals and stay off the stuff. Okay. But that doesn't work long term, eventually, because something will come up. And you can't exercise your way out of it. You've got to actually face it and work through it, whatever.
Now, Mike, what do you think of the ketogenic diet? I've done this a variety of times. It really emotionally levels me out. My mother lost 20, 30 pounds on it at one point. What do you think of the keto diet?
Look, I'm a big fan of the keto diet. I used to be vegetarian myself. A lot of my contemporaries will not work with vegetarians because it's almost impossible to get enough calories on a vegetarian diet. I think you need healthy fats.
It's hard to do vegetarian and do keto, or it's just hard to do vegetarian
Get
first?
off of sugar. It's hard to get off of sugar because you have so many grains and things that are creating sugar, and you have so much fruit, and even some of the greens. The nuts and nut butters are part of our program because they're drupes. They're not even nuts. They're the seeds of fruits which have been hybridized to take the bitterness out, and so they have fructose. And when you combine it into a nut butter, people are eating nut butter out of the bottle.
Nut butter's really good.
Yeah. It is, and people, when we get to be our age, we're no longer getting a buzz like you see when the cake and ice cream comes out at a 4-year-old's birthday party. We're no longer getting that. We are just fighting off withdrawals. We don't have time to be irritable, have a headache, be lethargic, be hangry. We don't have time. It's like we've got to go and re-ingest or ingest, or we're not going to get out of this thing. We're not going to be able to go to our meeting, or we're not going to be able to babysit or do whatever, So it's it takes about the arc of a podcast or a summit interview to get this all out so that people in the quote unquote diet world can start to understand what piece of the puzzle they've been missing for decades in trying to reduce the white stuff. Okay. And what we've been talking about, thank you for being open-minded about it, is really, like I said, the missing piece of the puzzle.
This is so interesting. I recently heard a summary of some research. This is a police department. It might have been Boston. They had 3 groups for weight loss. Group 1 did nothing. Group 2 did diet modification. And let's say it was a smart diet modification. And group 3 did diet modification plus exercise. At the end of, I think it was 3 months, group 1 did not lose any weight. It was the kind of the control group. Groups 2 and 3 lost about the approximate amount of weight. Diet and exercise lost the same amount of weight. And so I want people to understand that exercise is not about losing weight. Exercise is about feeling good. Then 6 months later, guess who still had the weight off? So they stopped the program, but they let people do whatever they wanted. Guess which group still had the weight off? The exercise group.
Yeah.
The exercise group. Why? Well, they kept exercising. And when you keep exercising, what does that do? That helps, as you point out, that helps your emotional brain chemicals. And they also kept up their diet because it's not a lot easier to stay on a healthy diet when you're exercising, because that feels good. That feels right. That feels aligned. And if you're getting your feel-good neurotransmitters stimulated with exercise, we're not looking to food to fill that gap.
100%. No, this is you're hitting the nail of our message on the head. That's exactly correct. Like the bringing back of the, let's look at SSRIs. Okay. Like this, I don't know if you've ever heard of somebody talking about their Paxil and their Valium and all this other stuff. Like what the doctors are trying to do is they're trying to dial in your serotonin in your brain so that it's working right. So we'll give you we'll take half of this. Let's up this milligram. Let's add this one to it, right? They're literally playing with your brain reward chemicals, okay, to kind of make it so that you're not depressed or whatever. Well, you got to think about this back when you're talking about sugar, flour, and sugar and caffeine. We have been doing it unconsciously, and now the information about wired together, fired together, caffeine, sugar, these things, people are starting to understand that we've been doing this in a self-medicating way, and that they are powerful enough to actually move or affect the brain chemicals so much that when you try and stop, you have an addiction withdrawal process, right? That's again, the missing piece of the puzzle that you've been so kind to let me finish articulating through this whole discussion.
It's so the fire together, wire together. You mentioned caffeine and sugar. So I'm a big fan of coffee in particular. I'm really getting more into decaf coffee because it's rich in polyphenols, but doesn't have, caffeine's not great for everyone all the time.
Right.
So if people are taking coffee, but they got sugar in their coffee, or they got dairy in their coffee, which has sugar, dairy actually is rich in sugar, and dairy's got its own problems as well. Dairy actually reduces the benefit of coffee by binding to polyphenols. The protein in dairy binds to the polyphenols and reduces our absorption. So dairy, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you're putting that in your coffee. But sugar, the coffee, if we're taking that caffeine, which increases sensitivity to dopamine, and we're taking sugar in it, now those two, now does that make that sugar doubly addictive, because it's combining both caffeine and sugar and those two dopamine mechanisms.
That's the wired together, fire together. Okay, so next to the fruit, this is my second largest pushback. So I tell the story about 7 years ago. I was working with an Olympic athlete. She actually won a bronze medal in swimming, and by this time she was a chiropractor, had a couple kids, and we'd worked together 3 or 4 months, but she couldn't stay off the sugar. And I didn't know about the caffeine connection as much. I've been caffeine free for over 30 years.
Wow.
But she didn't understand, and we didn't understand together. And so we started to dig in and found out that her coaches would give her coffee at 10 years old for performance. And no child is doing this, right? They're not drinking without a lot of sugar. And
so, totally. Imagine how much sugar a 10-year-old puts in their coffee.
Right, exactly. So here we are. And when we finally realized it, we got her off the caffeine, then the sugar got off, and we got off the sugar. So since we've been doing this, about 10 to 15% of my group can still drink black coffee and black tea, but I still don't think it ends well. I don't have enough data yet, but for the most part, I like to include the caffeine because of the wired together, fire together. Chocolate, tea, coffee, all of these cocoa, all of these things are combined. So when you get one, your body is craving the other, okay? It's a poor man's speedball. This is what John Belushi died of, an upper and a downer, okay? You got the caffeine and the sugar, okay? And that sense of having the chocolate at 4 o'clock takes the edge off the caffeine and the sugar withdrawals. That's why it's so attractive, okay? And when you get, a lot of our folks are highly sensitive, okay? And they, people, when they hear this kind of a discussion, they're like, but, this is, these drugs, if what you're saying is true, this should be illegal. And in my world, I think it should be.
I agree.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff, a lot of this is illegal in other countries. You can't do these things in other countries.
Right. I mean, if you were to introduce both sugar and caffeine to the FDA today with never having had it, I doubt they would be approved as gratis, as generally regarded as.
Well, with this FDA, if their pockets are lined sufficiently, I think frankly they'll approve most things.
Right. I mean, look, it's like the coffee thing, the caffeine thing. Here's what I always say, Robert. Look, just give me, I call it buying into Mikey's little fantasy. Just give me 90 days. Okay. I've never truly had anyone who gave me 90 days, no flour, no sugar and caffeine, who ever wanted to go back. Now, a few have slipped and whatever, but most people, they just, their skin is better. Their brain is working better. They've lost the weight, or they're on the way to losing the weight, and they want to keep this up. Okay. But they went through some rough times in the first 30 or 60 days. It wasn't easy, but with the group and with the coaching, they got through it. Okay. They have to have a guide that, we're tribe animals. You're going to be the odd person out in your family, in your friend group, if you try this alone. Okay. I'm just warning you. And I'm sure you have tried it alone from some diet. You know what I mean?
I tell people, listen, if you're going to quit sugar, if you are going to reduce sugar or reduce alcohol, get your family involved, get your husband, wife, partner, get your children involved. Say, look, mommy, daddy needs to get off of alcohol or needs to get off of sugar. Please help me. I want, I'm not going to be cooking these certain foods, or, I'm not going to have alcohol around. Please, keep the stuff, help me keep the stuff hidden away. Just make it easy for me to let go of these things. And getting the family involved is really, really important, because it's hard to give up sugar. One Christmas, I was letting go of sugar and I wasn't drinking. And I was home at my parents' house. There was a full bar that I'd walk past all the time, and everyone else was drinking. And then there was like chocolate, high sugar chocolate out on the bar. I thought, goodness, how many times can I walk by this a day and say no to both the sugar and the alcohol? It was really challenging. It was like my least favorite Christmas. I had to hide in the basement for a half the night. I just couldn't be around it anymore.
Throw a little twist on what that's going on there is like at holiday times, families are delicate emotional groupings, you know what I mean? And especially when you get to be adults and everybody's an adult and whatever, and everybody wants to be nice, except the undertones are still there of some worries and fears and anxieties and resentments and those kind of things. And that's why alcohol, sugar, everything is heightened during that time period. That's why everybody wants to quit in January, because the legal drugs got them through the Thanksgivings and Christmases, you know what I mean? And when you start to, like I said, it's only pattern recognition at this point. You start to see all of these patterns that develop. And so you're able to refute the pattern and try and change exactly how people's behavior is. So it's a labor of love, but it's still complicated or frustrating because everybody's still trying to find a pill or a shake or an exercise routine or a diet plan that helps them lose weight. So,
well, Mike, thank you so much. This has been so important to help you understand the importance of getting fructose out of their diet, eliminating sugar, especially the refined sugar, and not only for our brain health but also for our emotional health. This is so important. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for your open-mindedness and allowing me to discuss and at least get out this emotional component, this emotional piece of the puzzle, because I do believe genuinely in my heart that it is the missing piece for people, and if they would just let that information light on them as opposed to trying to find another diet, it would help.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.